Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third and final session of the 7th Annual 2020 South Texas Transportation Conference. This morning, we have a special program along the lines of the airline industry. So we want to make sure we get into this. We're going to be respectful of everybody's time. This will last about 1 hour. And we also encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen for any questions that pop up after our presenters have taken care of it. My name's Jeff Lyon. I'm President and CEO of the Victoria Chamber of Commerce. This transportation conference is being presented in conjunction with Civil Corps Engineering and the Victoria Chamber. As I said, we normally do these in person, and this is another victim of COVID, but we have had some very successful conferences, and we're very excited to do this next year in person. For those of you who are attending this and are acquiring continuing education hours on this, Ben Galvan will be sending off those certifications after this final session. Additionally, all 3 sessions will be put up on YouTube, on the Chamber YouTube channel, and everything can be viewed in completion after this last session. So as we move on, we have some opening remarks by Raleigh McCoy, the mayor of the city of Victoria. Mr. McCoy was elected mayor in May of 2019 as with economic development as a priority, and air transportation is just as important in that. The mayor had no idea that some of his plans would change around March with the coronavirus and the pandemic that we're in now. But he's done an outstanding job keeping focus for the city and keeping a focus on what he wants to do on economic development. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce our mayor, Raleigh McCoy.
Thank you. It is my honor as mayor of the city of Victoria to welcome all of you as participants in session 3 of the virtual 2020 South Texas Transportation Conference. I would also like to thank the Victoria Chamber of Commerce, Civil Corps, and other sponsors of this year's event for moving forward with it in this year of uncertainty on so many fronts. You are to be commended. Adequate and ever-growing transportation infrastructure, whether it be highway, rail, water, or the subject of today's session, air, is crucial to the economic development of not only the city and county of Victoria, but our entire region. Recent and continuing work on the I-69 corridor in Victoria, as well as continuing efforts to improve our port and push for more robust rail access in the area has been important for us. I can tell you, though, that the recent selection of SkyWest Airlines to provide passenger service at Victoria Regional Airport is huge for us. It literally brings Victoria into the jet age. The prospect of once again having fast, comfortable, and more importantly, reliable air service with good connectivity to the world of air travel is a game changer for us. And for that, we are grateful to Lenny Lorena, Executive Director, and the members of the Victoria Regional Airport Commission, whose vision and hard work has brought us to this beginning in air service for our community. Again, welcome to today's session, and enjoy what I know will be an informative program. And for next year's conference, may I suggest a fly-in?
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Mayor, and we're glad that you were able to join us this morning. Now I would like to introduce Ben Galvan of Civil Corps Engineering, who also chairs our transportation committee for the Victoria Chamber of Commerce. Good morning, Ben.
Good morning, and thank you, Jeff. And thank you, Mayor McCoy. We appreciate your opening remarks and your continued support over the last several years. Well, good morning and thank you for joining us for our third annual and final session of this year's Transportation Conference. I'm Ben Galvan. I am the chairman of the Transportation Committee for the Victoria Chamber of Commerce. And I'm also the president of Civicor, and we are proud to be the presenting sponsor of this year's conference we've started this a few years ago. This is our seventh annual Transportation Conference, and though we'd much rather would like to have this in person, we're making this happen the 2020 way. And that's why we chose a theme for this year's conference, transportation in a COVID environment. We've heard about roadways, high-speed rail in prior sessions, so I'm really looking forward to today's session on air travel. And I'd also like to take this time to thank our sponsors for their support of this event. Our freeway sponsors are Invista, HEB, the Port of Victoria, and Clean Core International. Our rail sponsors are Stantec, Rexco, BGE, Civil Tech, Volkert, Hunter Industries, and Wells Fargo Advisors. And finally, our air and waterway sponsors are Michael Baker, Brandon Paving, Doucette & Associates, Prosperity Bank, and Friesa Nichols. Thank you all for your support. And as a reminder for our Texas PEs, CECs are available for each session. So if you'd like us to send you a form, just send an email to me or to the chamber and we'll send the certificate after today's session. And the email is for the chamber is on the email that you received for the registration. So now I would like to turn this over to Lenny Lorena. Lenny is the executive director of the Victoria Regional Airport, and he's also a member of our transportation committee. So Lenny will introduce today's speaker. Lenny?
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce Greg Atkin. Greg is the managing director of market development for SkyWest Airlines. Greg has been in the airline industry for about 15 years. Prior to Greg's 6 years at SkyWest, Greg has worked in various pricing and scheduling roles at former airline US Airways. And he also did a 2-year stint as an air service development consultant. Greg has a bachelor's degree in finance from Arizona State University. Greg has been a lifelong aviation enthusiast and resides in St. George, Utah with his wife and 4 kids. It is my pleasure to introduce Greg Atkin.
Lenny, thank you for that introduction, and thank you for everyone's attendance at this conference. This is something I think we're all going to remember for years to come as the conferences of 2020. So I appreciate you inviting me, and it's good to be here. So I have brought a presentation that I'd like to share. Let me make sure I get this shared up here. So I want to talk a little bit today about SkyWest Airlines, a little bit about our history, a little bit about what's happened with COVID to SkyWest and the industry at large. So with that, I'll start with SkyWest's history. SkyWest was founded in 1972, so almost 50 years ago, in what was then a very small town of St. George, Utah. And the company has been in this community ever since. And our mission statement and what we've done that entire time is to connect small and medium-sized communities to the global transportation network. Today, we have 4 major airline partners. We partner with Alaska Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines, and United Airlines. We operate a fleet of about 500 regional jet aircraft. We do hold the distinction of being the largest regional jet operator in the world. As far as our aircraft, we operate generally 2 types of aircraft. The one manufactured by Bombardier of Canada is we operate all versions of the CRJ aircraft, the 50-seat 200, the 65 to 70-seat 700, and then the 76-seat 900. And then we also operate the Embraer 175. If you look at the number of daily departures we had in 2019, actually this is even true at the beginning of March of this year, we operated 2,500 daily departures to 245 cities. And in 2019, we carried 44 million passengers. And part of what we try to do with our business, and I think people that have our air service see this and will see this here in Victoria, is that though the community works with us and we've tried to forge a strong partnership with their community, the passengers, what we're really trying to do is to make it so that the passenger sees a seamless experience connected to one of our major partners. You know, in Victoria's case, this will be under the United Airlines brand. And so a customer in Victoria, their travel experience, they'll be able to use the United technology, such as their app for their phone. They'll collect United Mileage Plus points, etc. The aircraft will land near the United Airlines gates at the hubbing airport. And so we really try to make this as seamless as possible for customers. So if you look at where we fly today, this is our route map. It's a little bit busy, but this, believe it or not, is the route map even during COVID. This is October of 2020, so the very month that we're in. And we still have flights in almost every state. There's even a few flights that are crossing the border into Canada and Mexico. So if you look at what has happened for the demand for air travel during this pandemic, it's shifted very dramatically. On the left-hand side of this chart is the TSA throughput. And I'll just summarize it by saying a few things. In April of 2020, demand for air travel as measured by the TSA throughput was down 96%. I don't know if I've ever heard of a business where their demand for the entire business went down 96% in 1 month. If you look at the data since then in May, June, July, August, September, October, we're now about, demand is down about 60% to 65% is about what it is today. So demand is still severely depressed, though it is having a slow creep upward. When we talk to our major partners, they are telling us that the majority of their corporate customers are now traveling. However, it's at much smaller volumes than it used to be. If you look at what's happened for this pandemic on the number of seats scheduled in the United States, seats presently are down. They're about 58% compared to what they were in March. So what that means for the moment is that there are more empty seats right now than what people are used to. And part of that is when airlines plan for the future, for example, right now we're just finalizing our December schedule. We have to make some assumptions on what demand will look like in December. And so airlines have gone ahead. We have to kind of leap ahead of where the national headlines are. And I can tell you what it looks like we're seeing for November and December is that demand for Thanksgiving travel and for Christmas travel is likely going to be higher than anything we've seen since the pandemic started. I do believe November and December will actually end up being better months than August or September or any of the months recently. A big reason for that is because the leisure traveler is dominating who's traveling right now. And Thanksgiving and Christmas are opportunities for that traveler to fly. I have another chart I want to show you that says specifically what has the COVID-19 impact been on SkyWest Airlines, and there's two bars here. There's a blue bar and then there's a kind of a yellow-orange bar. And the yellow-orange bar is our load factor on our flights. And if you look at that dip at the very bottom in April, we ran a system-wide load factor of 7%. Today, we are closer to a 65% load factor. And if you look back in history, we were averaging closer to 75 or 80. If you look at the number of flights, in early March, we were at 2,655 flights a day. The low point came in May and June when we were operating about 700 flights a day. And right now we're about 1,800 flights a day. And over Christmas and Thanksgiving, we will end up being right around 2,000 flights a day for those peak time periods. So another thing that's worth noting is each region of the country is recovering at a different pace on air travel demand. This is something, I've been in the industry for 15 years, and so I was here during the financial crisis, and this is something that I haven't ever seen before. If you look at the percent recovery by seats for sale in each region, the Mountain West region, which is generally kind of Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, that area, has recovered the quickest. A big reason for that is because of a lot of the outdoor destinations people could go to in that region. The Southwest has been the next quickest to recover, and that includes the state of Texas at 56%. And the Midwest and the South have been just a little bit less than that. The West Coast drops down yet again, and then the most challenged region is what we call the East Corridor, which is generally kind of the Northeast down through sort of Virginia, North Carolina, and that area has been very challenged on the air service recovery. A big driver of that is because the Northeast region of the United States tends to have a high concentration of business travelers. In addition, states like New Jersey, New York, Connecticut have much stricter quarantines on the traveling public. Let's talk a little bit about safety. There's been a lot of emphasis at SkyWest Airlines on how can we be safe during this pandemic. There's a lot of things that are being done, but I think what I'm going to attempt to do is see if I can get this video to play. This is a video that United uses, but we follow all of these standards on the SkyWest aircraft bearing their name. So I think that gives you an idea of what we are doing in partnership with United. I can tell you I have personally flown about on 16 flights since June, the majority of those on United branded aircraft. And I can tell you, for those that haven't traveled yet in the last few months, that the travel experience is maybe a little bit different than what you would expect. I mean, what I have found is that I think people's level of courtesy is as high as I've ever seen it. I mean, I think people's respect for space, for following the rules of the right way to board an aircraft, I've just found that it's been a very calm experience. The aircraft are cleaner than they've ever been, and the filtration systems on the aircraft are very good, and I think it's provided for a very calm experience. So let's talk just a little bit about, though there's been lots of changes on the safety front in terms of aircraft cleanliness and the travel experience, I think it's important to note what hasn't changed at SkyWest Airlines, and that is our commitment to safe operations and high reliability. We recognize that one of the most important things for people when they travel, particularly business travelers, is making sure that their flight goes when they need it to go. And so we go to great lengths to make sure our flights are on time and that they are not canceled. We also continue to emphasize the partnership we have with the communities that we serve. We're excited here in just a couple of weeks to start service in Victoria, and we're looking forward to what we think will be a large increase in the number of passengers that use the airport and that find the service useful and reliable. So let's talk, a question we get asked quite a bit is, what is the plan for the future for the 50-seat regional jet? The 50-seat regional jet hasn't been made since about 2007. And prior to the pandemic, we operated about 200 of these aircraft. And our plan right now is to continue operating about 156 of them. And our plan is to keep these operating well into the 2030s. We've invested in a life extension program on this aircraft to keep it reliable for more than a decade longer. The major carriers have some agreements that dictate the types of regional jets that can be flown in the industry, and so the 50-seat jet will continue to provide an important role in serving small and medium-sized communities for many years to come. And then really from that, those are really the main points I wanted to make. And I wanted to leave it open for any questions or comments, or I'm happy to turn the time back to the conference as well.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Appreciate the presentation, and we're looking forward to having SkyWest in our community. I did get a question via text. What is SkyWest doing to promote ridership specifically here in Victoria?
So what we have is we've dedicated $20,000 each year for marketing efforts. And on the marketing team, there's a number of different avenues that we take, but one of the avenues that we've done more of over the past couple of years that I think will be what you'll see most of it in Victoria is the online efforts. For example, let's say somebody is on their computer and they are searching for flights to Orlando. We have some technology with some of the partners that we work with that can serve up an ad to that person that says, hey, fly out of Victoria, fly out of this airport. And so what it's trying to do is target those that are actively searching for air travel. In addition to that, we are willing to do ticket giveaways for special events. And we also are willing to do traditional forms of advertising such as radio and print.
And of course, a chamber membership never hurts there, Greg. Just want to pitch that out there to you.
I appreciate that.
Also, we had another question. Is there any idea on the pricing that SkyWest will be offering, of course, through United?
Yeah, so great question. So pricing is one of the probably the most interesting but yet most complicated part of airline or part of what we talk about. So the pricing comes in sort of two parts. There's the pricing of if you were to just fly to Houston and that was the end of your journey, and we can talk a little bit about that. But I think the more interesting piece is what will the pricing be to various places people are going, such as Orlando or Los Angeles or Las Vegas. And there is literally in Victoria thousands of fares now, which is something new. And so there is unique pricing to each community. So Las Vegas has specific pricing into Victoria, Los Angeles, and it's designed to be broadly competitive with the region. And so I think the simplest way of me saying it is that is to just come and check it out. If there's an itinerary that you're thinking about, that you're looking at, take a look at the pricing from Victoria, and I think you will, in most cases, find that it is competitive. And I would just encourage everyone to check out that pricing for some of the destinations that you're interested in.
Thank you. Let's see. I have another question. Let's see. Projections for post-COVID are very hard, and many are in a survivor mode. What are the main features that you see would change or you need to change in how airports support your new business model going forward?
That's a really, really good question. So I think my take on the COVID recovery is there's going to be a few different phases. There's the sort of the phase we're in now, which is just maybe I'm going to call it a survival phase. And during this phase, I think it's really just trying to make sure that really the airport is doing things as efficiently as possible so that they can survive and be ready for the future. I think as we get a little further onto this recovery, I'm hopeful that we'll return back to some of the topics of how to best manage growth, and we start having problems of, maybe hold rooms not being big enough or, needing new infrastructure. I hope we can return back to those conversations. I know when it comes to some of the hub airports we've talked with, that they are using this time in some instances to reinvest in their facilities while travel is down. So for example, if they have to close down gates to advance certain construction projects, they're doing that now. And so if there is a construction project that an airport has that's going to cause an inconvenience to flights or customers, to the extent the money is there, and I know a lot of these projects have a large grant portion, it is probably an ideal time to do those if possible. So those are a couple things I would say right now.
Another question, Greg. Do customers, will they be checking pricing on SkyWest or the United Airline website?
Very good question. So the pricing will all be displayed on the United Airlines website. In addition, you'll be able to find it on all the places like Expedia, Travelocity, Google Flights. I'll tell you, there's a really cool feature that you can take a look at on Google Flights. There's a map feature on there. And so you can go on to Google Flights and say you want to travel for a trip in January. You can go on there and you can look at a map view and you can literally see the prices from Victoria to everywhere in the United States on a single view for a particular date.
Okay, one other question. What is today's limit for the outermost date for booking and planning future trips?
So we have our schedules for sale 330 days in advance. So you can book right now almost a year in advance. So right now, what we are seeing is a lot of the people are planning closer in, but it is indeed possible to plan travel for next summer as we speak.
One question I know, just because of the previous airline boutique that was in here, and now that you guys will be coming in on November 11th and starting your flights, is there any planned future for flights to Dallas once you get rolling and basically get your model moving right along?
Yes, that's a great question there as well. So what we I think this is part of what we want to see as part of the recovery. We know that there is demand for travel from Victoria to Dallas. Dallas has become a huge marketplace in aviation over the past 20, 30 years. And we recognize that. And what we want to do is sort of build the traffic up. And then we are open to entertaining discussions of serving Dallas at that point.
Lenny, I believe you've got your hand up for a question. If you'd like to go ahead and ask.
Yes, Jeff, thank you. Greg, you see the aviation industry in Europe and South America, they're moving forward with doing rapid testing at the airports, and it seems like it's working, at least for what I checked in South America. Some of the airports that are open now, like Quito, Ecuador, and other ones in Europe, are doing this rapid test at the airport for passengers before they get in the airplane. Do you see, and also I have seen that 1 or 2 airports in the States are doing the same thing. Do you see this trend moving, to more airports in the United States, or what do you see on that basis? Also, some other places around the world require you to have a COVID test before you can fly to those parts of the world. Do you see the United States moving into this trend in the near future?
Yeah, so one place that I can talk about that you mentioned the COVID test is Hawaii. If you want to go to Hawaii right now, you need to have a COVID test within 72 hours of your flight. In that case, they're checking it on the flight that goes nonstop to Hawaii. So, if you fly to Houston and then you want to connect to the Honolulu flight, they would check it as you're boarding that Honolulu flight. My prediction here is that internationally, this will become largely standardized over the next, 3 to 6 months. And I think international travel is going to require that. I expect the restrictions will loosen as those procedures get implemented. On domestic travel, I have a little bit of a different take. I believe that for the most part, domestic travel probably won't end up having those measures taken. I could be wrong on that, but I think the domestic marketplace is going to largely stay on what I would probably just call the honor system. That if you feel sick, you don't go on your trip, I'm not sure I see testing on domestic journeys, but we'll see.
Greg, one question, and you may have gone over it, but the layout of the airplane, how is it laid out, for the 50 passengers?
Yeah, so you board in the front, and then in the front is the galley area where the flight attendant is, and the seats are set up to where there's 2 seats on either side. There's an aisle seat and a window seat on either side, and then so there's 4 seats across. And then it goes all the way to the back, and then the restroom is in the rear. And so that's how the aircraft is configured. There's also overhead bins that'll fit small bags and backpacks. For traditional rollerboard size bags, you can carry them on. The procedure that we use is just before you board the plane, they will valet them into the back of the aircraft. And then when you come off the plane, they'll valet them back up to the front of the aircraft for you.
Will there be any social distancing on the planes, on your flights initially? If it's not a full flight, are you going to stagger the seating?
Yeah, so that is part of the part of what we would aim to do is that as the passengers, if a flight is not full, to have them spread out. Usually, though, it's done by groups. So if you're traveling, say with a spouse or something, there is an effort to spread the groups apart, but it's more so when there's unique customers to spread them out from each other.
On the flight to Houston, where will the incoming flight to Houston International, where will that terminal be?
So it'll be in the United terminal, most likely on the B gates, which is where a lot of the United Express flights operate to and from. It's also, just going back on your previous one, it is worth noting United did put out or actually it wasn't United, I think it was IATA, put out a study, and between some of the cleaning measures, and then when you board a flight right now, you're handed some wipes so you're able to wipe away your seat area. I think that the headline was something like you're about as likely to get struck by lightning as to get COVID on an aircraft, and that seems to be a pretty extraordinary statement. But it's really due to the cleaning procedures and I think even a bigger part may be the aircraft filtration systems. Not recirculate. The air is fresh air about every 5 minutes, and so I think those are some big factors. And if you think about what you've seen in the news, you haven't seen with all the headlines we've seen this year. We really haven't seen any headlines about aircraft being a problem for the spread of COVID-19, and I think that's pretty remarkable considering what we've seen this year.
Mayor McCoy, I believe you've got a question for Greg.
Yes, two things. I was going to say what the actual fare was because my wife booked a flight to Dallas from Victoria to go see our daughter at the end of November. And the round trip flight was $280.11, which I think is fairly reasonable, especially if that were for a business person to go on a round trip flight to Dallas, given the time it takes for someone to get up there via car. And then the other thing I was curious about, I think I saw where at Bush in 2021, Southwest in there with some operations.
Yes, that's correct. SkyWest Airlines will be entering Bush Intercontinental Airport in 2021. We don't know yet what markets they will fly, but they did announce their intention to return to that airport.
So is it possible if you like to fly Southwest that you could at least get your baggage through from your airline to theirs?
So that is something we wish we could do. The Southwest is a unique carrier in that they don't participate in baggage transfer agreements with anyone. They're kind of their own little animal, and so in the event you wanted to transition to a Southwest flight at Bush Intercontinental, you would want to probably not check bags so that you would have your carry-ons with you to do that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I know having an airline of this size, particularly with what SkyWest is offering the Victoria region, is it your plan in part of your marketing efforts to go after a lot of governmental and say some of our larger corporations in the area to utilize SkyWest?
That's correct. I mean, part of it, one of the values that I think we bring to the community is, a kind of leverage off the United brand. There's a lot of corporations who don't allow their employees to fly on the service that you've had there in the past, that they require twin engine aircraft. And so I think this does open the door for a lot of those businesses and as well as government entities to now travel out of Victoria. And as Lenny knows as well as anyone, using the Victoria Airport to start and end your journey is so simple. I mean, when we went down there, the facility is nice and easy to get through. It's something to where, one that I find personally is that, particularly when you're coming back from a trip and it's say 10:30 at night, the last thing you want to do if you were to land at say Houston or Austin or one of the other airports in the region is to drive home after you get home late at night. It is so nice to just fly right in and to be just minutes from your home.
Very true. So let's discuss a little bit about your marketing, say, out of Victoria. Many times when economic development and other businesses are possibly recruiting or wanting some people to come in to Victoria to view business opportunities or whatever it is. It could be a tourism event, it could be an industrial event. A lot of them are still driving in from, surrounding airports, whether it be Corpus Christi, San Antonio, Austin, and of course, Houston. How can we better capture that market coming into us, that they utilize our airport, coming in and then of course leaving, going back to their destination?
Yeah, so one of the things I would recommend for the groups that are bringing in either conferences or groups or whoever from out of town is to mention it in two ways. One is on any emails or written material that is put out for a conference or a gathering, to specifically cite that, hey, Victoria now has United Jet service. And I think that it alone is simple enough to let people know that, hey, in the past when you've come here, maybe you've come a different route, but we'd like you to consider flying right into Victoria, because sometimes people just go with what they've done in the past and they aren't aware of the new service options. So I think what we've done in other communities and what I'd recommend here is that as communication for these events comes out, that there be a spot, and we can work with you on providing some branding and formatting for that, to just make a mention of that on how you can get to Victoria.
Is there a possibility that some of these groups could participate with you in a promotional code, a promo code used on a website?
So for us, the way our systems are set up, it's hard to do a promo code. What we can do though is we can give away a free ticket or something like that. And so the way we might approach it is see if there's a way to weave that into the offering at a minimum, just to raise the awareness of it.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Are there any other questions? You can either raise your hand or use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Right now, I don't have any questions in the queue, but if you do have something while we close this out, we can. But Greg, I want to thank you for your time today, and we're looking forward to having SkyWest Airlines in Victoria. It's a big deal to us, and we're really excited about it. Now, I'll give Lenny an opportunity to talk about November 11th regarding SkyWest. Lenny, this would be a great venue for you to say this, and I'm not going to charge you for it, so you go ahead and use this free time.
Well, thank you. What we're trying to do is we have gotten a group of people here in Victoria, and what we're doing is we're flying in the first flight to Houston out of Victoria on the 11th. It's at 7:10 in the morning. So if you want to go with us to Houston that morning, we're going to fly to Houston, grab a cup of coffee, and come right back in the next flight that I believe leaves Houston sometime around 10:30, and come back. And at that time, in conjunction with the Chamber of Commerce, we're going to do the ribbon cutting for SkyWest being here. We decided to do it on the 11th because we wanted to take that first flight out of Victoria. As we know, on November 10th, SkyWest will start flying, but they will come from Houston at a later time. But the first flight out of Victoria in the morning would be on the 11th. So that's the flight that I want to invite everybody who wants to join us to fly that day and go to Houston and come right back and do a ribbon cutting here at the terminal to join us, and go ahead and get your ticket. Most of us have gotten our tickets, and they're about $70, $73 right now for the round trip. So if you're free that day, I know it's a holiday, and that kind of freed a lot of people. So come and join us that day. All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Lenny. Greg, are there any closing comments that you would like to make before we all log off and get back to our workday?
Yes, I wanted to just thank you all for the hospitality and for the opportunity for SkyWest to come to Victoria. We are very excited, and I think we'll work through this COVID recovery together, and I think we can jointly take air transportation in Victoria to new heights in this upcoming year. And thank you for your partnership and your support.
Thank you very much. Well, this wraps up our third and final session of the 2020 South Texas Transportation Conference. I want to thank all of our sponsors for participating, and thank you to Civil Corps for collaborating with the Victoria Chamber of Commerce on it. Mayor McCoy, thank you for your opening comments. Those are greatly appreciated. And of course, our guest speaker, Greg Aiken with SkyWest Airlines. We're going to do this again in a year. I hope that we'll all do it together in person, but we will do it. I also want to thank Josh Garrett of Josh Garrett Video Production to help us make this a very seamless seminar that we've done over a period of 3 days, different days. And we wanted to be mindful of your time so that we didn't take up a lot of people's time just in one setting. So Ben, are there any closing comments that you would like to make now on our final day?
And Jeff, I just want to say thank you for everything that you have done to make this conference, I believe, to be a success. It was a little challenging. We got through some rough spells, but thank you for your effort and your team's effort there at the Chamber. And also, I want to reiterate thank you to our sponsors that have supported us over the last several years, and the new sponsors that we gathered this year. Thank you all, and we're just looking forward to doing this again next year in a live session, because we really miss networking with the folks out there, and so we're looking forward to doing that next year in person, shaking hands. So looking forward to next year. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Ben. And this concludes everything. So everybody can get out 1 week from today. We vote, and you still have time to vote in the Victoria area until this Friday. So everybody get out and vote. The polls, the early voting will be open till 7 o'clock at Patty Dotson and Faith Family Church. Have a good week.